Oh, there he is.
Hello.
Let me get you a little louder here so I can hear. Well, Chodo.
Yes,
Glad you're here.
you wanted to meet me, and here I am.
Wonderful, wonderful. I want to make a joke that if Trump can go to North Korea, I can meet Chodo.
Yeah, maybe it's a kind of to meet the real dragon.
I was just reading that today. You know, I went back every couple of years. I read Sensei's book to see if I find something new in it. I actually like to talk to you about that a little later. I'm on the section about the Four Noble Truths, which I have a lot of difficulty with his theory. You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I want to say, you know, a few years ago, half my family's in Leicester. You can't tell by the funny accent. So I haven't been back to the UK. I should go back soon to see my Uncle Bob. But sorry I didn't get to see you that time. We couldn't arrange it. And this is actually the first time we've met, kind of.
It is actually the first time we've met face to face. And thinking, let's be honest, Jundo, when we reflect on what happened in Sensei's final years, it was one hell of a bloody mess. And I think both you and I were, in our efforts to make less of a mess of it, actually we were part of the problem. You know, we were by no means the finished article.
Well, I apologize for whatever happened. I just want to tell you one thing. I really meant the best. I wasn't really trying to pull a fast one on anybody, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I wanted the books to be. We'll talk about it, but I just wanted the books to be preserved for all eternity.
That's the nub of the issue right there, you see, and this is the main thing that I was trying to say at the time, is because I understood it from following Sensei's teaching so sincerely and naively. Actually, I was naive in my pursuit of Sensei's teaching. That was the problem. I was extremely unselfish, but in a naive way. So at the age of 22, I met Sensei. And at the age of 23, I made a really solemn vow that I was going to make whatever sacrifices I needed to make for him to accomplish his Shobogenzo translation. Okay, that was quite a heavy karmic thing, actually. So you guys who sort of interfered without really knowing the real situation, to be honest, I expected you were bringing down on yourselves heavier karma than the way things have turned out. Like, the person who's really suffered is Sensei and me, actually, but especially Sensei in his final years, because he didn't really grasp the sacrifice that I made. He didn't understand what I'd sacrificed and the vow that I'd made, which I say was unselfish, but in a naive way. That was my big sin. And you see, I was also naive in when Sensei showed us how to have right posture. Most people didn't take him 100% literally, you know, because he especially like before you guys came along in the early years, he had a very forceful. He would pull your chin back, you see, to show you the right posture, and he stopped doing it later on, partly because of my criticism. But it really put people wrong in their sitting posture. And
I tell people they can sit in chairs. We have people in our Sangha, we have people with health issues. We have one guy who reclines on his side in the lion posture. We have people sitting seiza. As you know, a lot of Westerners struggle with the lotus, and I encourage it. But I have bad knees. I sit in the Burmese, and not too loose, not too tight. And I have no idea what I'm doing with my chin, but it feels comfortable. I just want to say one thing about the Shobogenzo before I forget the record. It should be said on the record that the Shobogenzo English is, I will say, 80% Chodo cross, because Nishijima Roshi did the original translation from classical Japanese to modern Japanese, but his English was not up to it. That translation is your translation. I am a hack translator, as you know. You are the most gifted translator I know in Japanese. I don't know how you did it. It's masterful. Sensei could not have done it on his own. And if every time people say the Nishijima cross translation, it's really, with all due respect to Sensei, it was your translation.
Well, let me stop with there, Jundo, because the truth is you don't know what happened. You see, there's your arrogance, really. Even though you're flattering me, you don't know what the situation was of the translation, and you've tended to act as if you did know. And even now, you've just said what you don't know as if you do know. Now, in 1986, when I first shaved my head, I started going into Sensei's office, and I didn't even bother buying a dictionary because I didn't want it to be. I was trying to be right, you see, which was naive, but I wanted it to be a true collaboration between me and Sensei. Mm-hmm. I didn't want people to say it was 80% Mike Cross. I wanted me to serve. That's how I conceived it. I was serving the master. Okay, so in that case, if a student serves the master, it is not the student's 80% translation. It's a collaborative effort.
Okay.
It was an act of religious sacrifice, that translation was. That's why I was so upset later on when Sensei made some changes to it and I complained about why he'd done that. He said, I took the decision as a businessman in the modern ages. Now, that was really hurtful. I mean, even if it's in business, Sensei was a businessman. He liked to keep things on a business footing. He said 50-50. That's how he described it. Not 80-20, 50-50. And I agreed to that. But if you're in a 50-50 business partnership, you do not do anything without your partner's agreement. Mm-hmm. And Sensei did go ahead without my agreement.
What changed?
And he got instant karma for that. Practically the very week that happened, he fell over in his dojo and hurt his back, went to hospital, and the dojo was like demolished within a matter of days or weeks. Mm. So, you know, that was the harsh reality of it.
I don't think the Shobogenzo ever would have been a major bestseller. It's very much for people who love Dogen and the rest of us who are in the Zen world. When I met him, I did not know the situation. And he came to me with a very simple idea, which was, he's nearly 90 years old. And he said, I'm concerned that when I die, that this is somehow preserved. So I said, well, first off, give it to the public. He said he didn't want to make, I'm trying to remember, actually. I don't remember. I don't think anyone was really concerned that there would be a lot of sales from it. It was costing more to print than it was to sell at the time. But he wanted to preserve it. So I said, okay, well, all your students love you. Let's make a trust with a committee of students and we can all cooperate to just keep it in print. That was my simple idea. And there was nothing in it for me. I didn't care. I don't want I just wanted to keep the books alive. And
the slight flaw in that, it must be obvious to anybody who's listening, Jim. Why didn't you mention it to me? It wasn't Sensei's to give to the public. The copyright was held jointly. The only way that you and the other people in that group, I mean, Sensei was keeping me informed of how that group was planning things. The only way you could justify doing it the way you did is if Sensei was the enlightened master and I was the black sheep that had strayed. You see, that was the sort of assumption. How else would you justify leaving me out of the loop on that?
That's what I would. First off, I wouldn't do it without you because you have half the rights to the book. So there was no way I tried to go behind your back. What I remember was I think I came to you with the idea saying, "Isn't this good? Let's do it." And then the trouble started. And then
Yeah, because I didn't agree to it.
right, I know, so nothing happened. That's my point. But I was very surprised. And then I just tried to work something out, and nobody could agree on anything. So, but I didn't try to go behind your back in any way. I told you what was going on.
I accept that you were trying to do your best, and as you phrased yourself at the time, you were trying to be the good guy. And so I spent a lot of time trying to understand what went wrong. I think that's important for us now, honestly, you know, honestly, in a spirit of atonement, to look back and understand what went wrong. I mean, all these years, I have, in a sense, been consciously holding a grudge. People have been saying to me, Mike, move on, etc. But I've consciously held the grudge because it's like a reminder to myself that this needs to be sorted out. We need to understand what went wrong. We need to be clear about what went wrong, what happened that was wrong. You know, there's where sort of reconciliation and peace lies, in really seeing the truth. And that requires a certain amount of courage, really, because one has to sort of look back and, you know, see where we were immature. You know, there's a whole list of things.
Well, as I see it,
which I'm. The first thing, though, Jim, the first thing is trying to be right. You see,
I don't think
what you've told me is.
You know, I'm one of those guys who says I think there are many sides here. Everybody's right and everybody's a little wrong. And still, the most important thing is to preserve the book so they don't disappear. And
well, I disagree. The important thing is to be clear about the teaching. Okay, the books, insofar as they're things, are impermanent and full of suffering. The Buddha said, samskaras are impermanent. Samskaras are full of suffering. Dharmas are empty. So what we're interested in is that the true Dharma, in a sense, it can't be preserved, but it can be transmitted. No, it can be taught. And so that's part of what went wrong, is that the basic conceptions of Sensei himself were not clear. He was not clear in regards to the teaching on a number of respects.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this. I want to be perfectly upfront with you what I feel. And as you can say, I don't really know the situation except just watching this thing for, what is it, 15 or 20 years now, however long this is. Sensei was a beautiful man with theories and ideas about Buddhism of his own, and as soft-spoken as he was, stubborn. And you are a man with your own theories about Buddhism, right or wrong, stubborn, and they're not Nishijima's theories, and the two of you bumped heads quite a bit. The chin, you know, his three philosophies and one reality, and you with the chin in and the chin out. I'm not saying who's right and I'm not saying who's wrong. I'm just saying two hard-sitting, hard-headed guys.
Well, your viewpoint there, Jim, is the postmodernist view. You know, nobody's right, nobody's wrong. Everybody's got their view. No, that's not the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha's teaching is to be clear about what the wrong thing is and don't do it. Okay? Shoaku makusa. That's the first thing. Shoaku makusa. Don't do evils.
No, I know. There's only one guy who's right. There's only one theory of Buddhism that's right. That's mine.
The point I'm saying is not about, we can't know what the right thing is, but we can know what the wrong thing is and not do it. So in regard to sensei, my role from the beginning with sensei was to show him where he went wrong. Okay, in the translation work also, I had to say, no, this isn't right. That's what my job was, to give him negative feedback, to keep him going in the right direction. That's what I did, as somebody who in the first instance was rewriting his things. You correct people's mistakes. So
I'm going to tell you honestly, I just wrote a book of commentary on Dogen. Actually, it turned into 500 pages. So it's 2 books. It's in the editors right now. I think you're both wrong, but I think I'm wrong too. I don't mean, don't get me wrong. I agree that there's a right way, but I don't think any of us, we're offering viewpoints on Dogen. We're offering viewpoints on Shobo Genzo. We can all be convinced that our way or the highway, but we have to all admit that while I feel I'm right, I might be wrong.
Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And so what went wrong? This is my question to you. We both honestly need to see what went wrong so those mistakes aren't repeated. And I agree with what you just said. Part of it was I am right, taking a position that I am right. Which is the wrong way to go about it, isn't it? Rather than assuming that I am right, the assumption should be, look, I'm wrong. I haven't got the whole truth. So let's see, how am I wrong? How can I not be wrong? And how can I go in the right direction? This is what I learned by going back to England and studying the Alexander technique, because Alexander was very clear in his famous phrase, there is no such thing as a right position, but there is a right direction. And so, that is the continuing struggle to free oneself from sort of deluded efforts to be in the right position, and thereby to free oneself to go in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Now, see, one of the ways we're wrong is sectarianism. I think sectarianism and tribalism. So the real meaning of shukke, to leave home, to become a true monk, is related with that.
How so?
Because zaike means staying in the home, staying in the family, staying in secular society, staying in your own group. And shukke means leaving that, going forth from that. And so when we're, see, shukke is really unselfish. Shukke is a kind of a sacrifice. It's an unselfish thing to become a true monk. It's a very difficult sacrifice to make. And so my now you can tell me if you think this is wrong, but my prejudice or the view I've formed over the years, all views are there to be abandoned. But what I've come increasingly to see over the last few years is I was sort of turned over by people who've taken the ceremony to become Zen monks. And so part of my resentment, it's become more conscious, actually. I had an unconscious resentment about it, and it's become more conscious now. And so now I'm expressing it to you. To become a Zen monk is to be celibate. It's that kind of unselfishness. Now, I realized that I couldn't make it I couldn't hack celibacy in my 20s, so I got married. And as you know, you're bringing up a family there. Having children is a wonderful thing to teach you about unselfishness. because when you've got children, you know, they come first. You know, that's the way it should be. So you really experience what it is to be unselfish. But the irony is that in that unselfishness is a kind of selfishness, in the sense that they're my family, you know. So it's a good kind of selfishness, which is unselfish in the personal sense. You care more about your family than you do about yourself. But any kind of, you see, the Buddha's teaching was the first world religion. So Judaism possibly is older. Other religions are maybe older, other traditions. But the Buddhist teaching is the first truly universal or world religion. So to become a Buddhist monk, you know, you should transcend everything to truly become a Buddhist monk. That's why in Shobogenzo it says, you know, to be a true Shukkei, you have to understand the Dharma. You have to understand the teaching. It's just to have the ceremony, or even just to be celibate is not enough. You've got to understand where the teaching is going, and so that's one objection. The group you talked about that were all getting together and deciding what to do with the Shobogenzo. You were a group of Zen monks around Sensei.
We're not monks. It's not a no. I don't think we're any monks. Sometimes Brad and such use that word, and I avoid that word. I like friend along the way. Because let me offer another perspective. I agree with you completely about monks, and I support monks completely. I also think what Sensei was offering and what has happened in Japan with the clergy marrying is much like the Reformation in Europe. The celibate Catholic clergy, love them, more power to them, but also the Protestant clergy with family and kids. By the way, I saw on your blog that your son is in medical school. Congratulations. Lovely.
Thank you.
I have a 7-year-old here and a 15-year-old myself. And I think that there's also room for us too, because what Sensei was trying to do was offer a more out in the world practice. So as long as we say that you can be out in the world with your kids, with your job, with your family, and somehow teach people, worldly people outside the monastery, how to also live in the world, I think we have a role too. So I don't think it's an either or. I think there's a role for both of us. And if everybody was like us, Buddhism would be dead. But if everyone was in a monastery, then it would be kind of lifeless too. So we need the monks who are celibate, and we need the married monks. Or excuse me, that's the wrong word. We need the married friends on the way.
Well, I beg to differ on that point. And part of it, you see, becomes in the 80s, when I was translating Shobogenzo and serving Sensei, and sort of struggling to see if I could follow the way of a monk, which means celibacy. There was no sense in which Sensei recognized that you could be married and be a monk. Otherwise, I wouldn't have struggled so damn hard to be celibate. I thought, because particularly from reading Shobogenzo chapter 73, Sanju Shichibon Bodai Bumbo, there's a really, really strong emphasis on transcending family life or leaving home.
It's the late Dogen, you know, the hard ass Eiheiji in the boondocks Dogen, or the early out in Kyoto in the world. This is for everybody Dogen. So Dogen talked, as I say, out of both sides of his no-sided mouth.
Well, I don't think there was any change personally. I don't think there was any fundamental change. The change that I noticed in the later chapters of Shobogenzo is this very strong emphasis on cause and effect, on karma.
You know, that's talking about the early Bendowa Dogen, about people who think that you cannot practice with worldly things, do not realize that worldly things are the Buddha. You know the quote because it's your words. I'm quoting back to you, but I'm mangling up here. But in any case, Dogen's dead. And now we're in the 21st century. We have to bring these teachings out to living people. I'm not back in the 13th century. So, you know, whatever, if we're doing Buddhism wrong or right, Buddhism will survive. and we're all trying to do the best we can. So whether I'm a celibate monk or a married monk or a schmunk or a palunk, whatever I am, you know, we're trying to teach something good to help working people with kids, because we're working people with kids.
That's but it's the trying again, Jim. It's you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And what happened was that I started my family, and then Sensei started to give the ordination ceremony to married people. He started in the first case with Taijun, my friend Taijun. But she's the one person who actually is a true monk in Sensei's order. But then all the other people he's ordained have not intended to be celibate. Right. And on the sidelines, I spoke to Sensei about it, and he didn't seem to think it was important, you know. He just sort of like, they want to be monks, you know. So at first, it didn't bother me. I didn't take any notice of it. But then gradually I sort of realized that people because in Buddhist societies, to become a monk is the highest status thing you can do, you know. So if I go to Sri Lanka, the prime minister will prostrate himself to the monk.
Yeah, but that's not perfect Buddhism either. They have their own problems. The monastic system, I don't have to tell you, monastic system's got its own issues, its own problems. And what's going on in the West in some ways is bringing life to these teachings. So it's not good or bad either way. I'm sorry to be modernist, like you say, but there are good points and bad points on both sides.
Well, yeah. Another way of looking at it is I joined Sensei's order I took the precepts in 1983, okay, and made these very long and hard sacrifices before you guys turned up, and then you took the ceremony to become a monk, and suddenly you were taking a position that was above me. You were sort of like you know, sorting me out. So there was something very.
If you want to be, listen to me, brother, and I see senior brother. If you want to be above me, please be above me. I could care less. In other words, I respect you tremendously. You're as
you're expressing that now, but I'm asking what went wrong, you know, because it was a mess. The thing with the book you talked about
pain in the ass. You are not an easy guy to get along with, Mike. Chodo. Should I call you Chodo or Mike?
Well, Mike is fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's part of what a Buddhist order is about, you know. You show respect to people who are senior to you, even if they're a pain in the ass.
Well,
that's part of what it's about.
Yeah, I respect you, and I still think you're a pain in the ass. But in other words, I want to say again, you may think it's sincere or not sincere. I say thank you. You are have given a gift to all of us. There's not a day I don't turn to your translation.
Yeah, but I'm talking about what happened in the past, Jim. You say you respect me. You didn't respect me. People did not respect me. Even though you say the translation was 80% mine, which I don't accept. It was a collaboration between me and Sensei. You treated me as if I didn't really matter, because you were so in love with Sensei. And so there was something very wrong about that.
Not me. I was just trying to work out a deal. Let me tell you my experience with our Dogen Sangha brothers.
What you're going to tell me now, Jim, is mistakes were made, but not by me. It's the classic expression of cognitive dissonance.
By me too. Here was a mistake. I am the kind of guy, you know, let things be water under the bridge. Everybody get along. And my famous mistake was something I pushed for a while, called let's all sit zazen together and share a meal and let bygones be bygones. And just, you know, we're going to have a newsletter and we're going to like stay in touch and support each other. And whatever happened, and let's all, you know, be a nice family. And it's difficult to do that with this group. And one time I pushed it so hard that I actually made it worse. So you know, there's always a risk, you know, whatever you do, and even if you have good intentions, which I'm going to say I did have good intentions, but I screwed it up. So
yeah,
If I screwed up the book, if I screwed up the book matter, just know it wasn't my intent to do it, but I may have, maybe there was something I could have handled better. Yeah.
I want people to understand how the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
What our job is to embody the truth. When we sit in Zazen, our task, the valuable thing we can do as monks or as lay people. In my case, I don't claim to be a monk, even though I'm now actually, living in solitude by the forest. But never mind. I don't claim to be a monk. It doesn't matter.
I'm a celibate monk, but
it doesn't matter.
I'm a celibate monk on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay. But listen, our serious task is to, when we sit in Zazen, is to embody the truth. That's the point. But, and this is where I was mistaken, our task is to embody the truth in the opposite of a naive manner. Okay? So if we think we can contrive a good posture by doing this, that, and the other, that's naivety. And if we think we can do good in the world just by relying on good intentions, that is naivety. We have to be clear how good intentions can produce bad results if we're naive. So after we're enlightened, then we can go ahead and our good intentions will be translated in good results. So the thing we've really got to guard against is arrogance. That's really, the big sin, intellectual arrogance.
Exactly, Mike, with all you're not exactly the most humble individual I know about your beliefs.
Yeah, well, that's part of the problem. I would. No, that's right. That's, I think compared with what? I mean, I think that I'm going in the right direction.
Who doesn't? Look, I want to have this conversation. I don't want to hide anything. I want to tell you how I have seen you over the years, and you can tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
All right. And it's very difficult. As I said, this is the first time we've met, so it's very difficult. I'm not trying to psychoanalyze you at a distance, but it's all I got to go on. As I said, I think you are one of the most gifted translators I know, and also your attitude towards sitting for 4 hours. Do you still sit 4 hours a day?
Well, I used to sit 5 hours a day. For a while, I sat 5 hours a day, but not recently. No, I sit 4 times a day.
Your fact that you do not let things go, you are one of the most, which you have to be a gifted translator, you are obsessive. You are compulsive and obsessive, which makes you have the patience to do these amazing translations one after the other that you do. But because of that, you have a tendency to cling. This is before you started Buddhism. And I think you're also a black belt in karate and many things. You grab onto something and you're convinced you're right, so you hold on to it. I think the years of Zazen may have helped you with this, but that's still who you are. And because of that, you tend to get angry easily if anyone disagrees with you. And if things do not seem to be going exactly your way, you get a lot of friction there, and you've taken it out on me more than one occasion. Am I describing you incorrectly? Please set me straight.
Well, there are two levels of truth, Nagarjuna clarifies in the latest thing I've translated. On the level of conventional truth, there may be some merit in what you said, but you're describing me as if I'm a thing, as if I exist. But Nagarjuna's point is ultimately what you've described neither exists nor does not exist. Okay, so it's like, again, samskaras are empty, samskaras are impermanent, samskaras are full of suffering, dharmas are empty. So you describe me as if I'm a...
My joke is, I will say that I haven't bumped noses with the empty mic, and then I'm going to grab your nose and give you a twist.
Well, the empty mic, in the sphere of emptiness, there is no mic. That's the point. So that's part of what happened. See, I'm coming back to what went wrong. Part of what went wrong is people viewing each other in the terms that you've just described. Okay, so you are like this, you are like that. Now, if you become aware, I mean, I've only been translating Nagarjuna for a couple of years, but it starts to change the way you see things. Because if I've got a view of you, in Nagarjuna's teaching, that view is a view to be abandoned. Because you are not, let me finish, you are not a samskara, you're a happening, you're a dharma, which is empty. And on that basis, I can't criticize a happening that's empty. I can only criticize you if I turn you into something like a stone, you see.
Like a shifty Jewish lawyer? Now, you have said many, many times that you keep viewing me as a shifty Jewish lawyer. First off, shifty lawyer is one thing. You need to lay off the Jewish part. That is, I don't know who you are or what your background is, but that's racism. Second off, I may be a shifty lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you are guilty. I'm rubber, you're glue. What you say bounces off of me and sticks to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, part of the reason I do that, Jim, is because I have a recognition that the most anti-Semitic people in the world generally are Jews. So if you, I was winding you up because okay, you psychoanalyze me. If I was going to go into that area, you see, how do you get on with your father? Your father, your name is Cohen. Your father's name is Cohen. And how well do you get on with your father?
My father was the most beautiful guy. He was a jewel. He was the most Zen guy, and he wouldn't have known Buddha from Shmuda. He was he was a good guy.
Yeah.
But
anyway, I shouldn't go into that area because
my mother, on the other hand, that was like a stereotype right out of a Woody Allen movie.
Well, there you go. But I mean, I had an Alexander technique teacher who was Jewish, and she helped me so much. But I used to pull her leg that she was a typical Jewish mother, you know. But what I will say is this: we've all got unconscious biases, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
Sensei had his unconscious biases.
Yes.
But what I noticed about Sensei is he didn't pretend not to have them. Okay. He was quite nationalistic and racist in his views, actually. But he was not in the slightest bit politically correct, you know. So when I ostensibly I'm giving you a racist insult, sort of to wind you up, and also to give you some fuel to attack me for some reason. But in doing that, you see, if the most important thing is to be politically correct, then calling somebody a shifty Jewish lawyer is the biggest sin you can commit, isn't it? But if what's really important is to be honest about your shortcomings and see your failures, in doing that, I was really saying, look, I'm wrong. I'm a racist, you know. It's like,
from now on, do me a favor. Just call me a shifty lawyer. Just call me a shifty lawyer from now on.
Yeah, well.
But remember, I'm empty.
Exactly. Look, if I remember you're empty, then there's no basis to call you anything or psychoanalyze you either.
Are the Shobo Genzo translations empty?
Well, the translation itself, yes, exactly. That's the point. It was a happening. It was the Shobogenzo translation was an empty happening. The problem is when people started conceiving of it as a book which belongs to me and could be preserved. And the person who was guilty of that was me, yeah, partly, but really Sensei, because he was a bookworm. He loved his library, you know, he loved his books. He was very much attached to his books. So that was his shortcoming, really. But no, that's exactly the point. If we are actually acting, conversing with each other, interacting with each other on the basis of emptiness, those problems, those ego-based problems, which are rooted in selfishness, won't arise. You see, there's the hope.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. That we're on exactly the same non-page.
Yeah.
Well, I have you. Can I ask you a question? I'm always curious.
Sure.
What do you think of the other major translations? Soto's and Text Project, Tanahashi, and we won't even bother with OBC. Let's just leave them out of it. But what do you think of those two?
This might sound strange, Jim, but I haven't read any of them.
Coming from you, it does not sound strange.
I barely touched Shobogenzo. See, in 1997, I hadn't got to the end of the project. I hadn't got to the end of reviewing Shobogenzo Book 4 when this kind of major dislocation happened that really upset me. And since then, for me, the Shobogenzo has been like a poisoned well. I moved on to other. The metaphor I used was I turned further upstream to look for fresher water upstream. First of all in Ashvagosa, and then in Nagarjuna. And what I do remember of Shobogenzo is I think Nagarjuna, people who are interested in Shobogenzo would do very well to study Nagarjuna, because
I want to tell you, you know, my two commentaries. I am not a tremendous fan of the three. You know, this sentence is idealism. This sentence is materialism. This sentence is reality. I never was as one-to-one as Sensei on that. I see basically in Dogen the absolute and the relative, the 5 ranks, and a jazz musician, a guy who was taking the standard Mahayana. He was talking about, you know, the basic teachings, including Nagarjuna, and then he was picking up his saxophone like Coltrane, and he was just blowing, riffing away. That's why his language is so weird. It's just jazz riffs. You disagree with me?
Well, yeah, I disagree that he recognized the absolute and the relative. And again, those kind of philosophical points are clarified so brilliantly by Nagarjuna. See, in Nagarjuna, there's the absolute and the relative is the kind of thing which his opponent talks about, and which he criticizes on the basis of emptiness. And the best way of understanding it for modern people is, do you know Carlo Rovelli, the Italian quantum physicist?
No.
He's written some best-selling books to explain.
I'm writing a book with an Italian physicist, but not that one. Okay.
Well, at the quantum level that he studies, like the infinitely small level, he uses a metaphor for stones and happenings. Or sometimes he talks about stones and kisses. That at that level, things like stones don't exist. There are only happenings. And that is exactly the viewpoint of Nagarjuna in Mula Madhyamaka Karika. So his opponent in MMK, to me, he's somewhat reminiscent of Master Dogen in Shobogenzo. So this is you know, quite a major sort of thing to get one's head around, because Master Dogen very often, I mean, it follows from the Lotus Sutra. It talks about Nyoze, as it is, you know. Nyoze so, form as it is. Nyoze shiki, consciousness as it is. A stone lantern in the garden as it is. And Sensei was you know, following that trend, would talk about zazen is zazen. That's the ultimate sort of standpoint. Sitting meditation is sitting meditation. But that way of expressing things, to sum it up, is Zen realism. You know, A is A, B is B, Z is Z. But if you study Nagarjuna, you find that that is the viewpoint of Nagarjuna's opponent. Because if you say a stone is a stone, that is not the teaching of emptiness. The teaching of emptiness is that a stone is empty of self-existence as a stone. Okay, so there aren't any self-existing stones. What there are happenings. So when we conceive of a stone, in Sanskrit that is called prapancha. Prapancha is usually translated, in Tibetan Buddhism, for example, they translated there conceptual elaboration or conceptual proliferation. But the word conceptual is misleading. You see, if I say Jundo Cohen, the Jewish lawyer, that's prapancha. I've turned a happening into somebody, into a discrete self-existing thing, you see, which is, of course, that's what we do. We couldn't survive without doing that all the time. But at the level of ultimate truth,
if I may say about Dogen, though, I don't know if Nagarjuna did this too, but Dogen then turned around and said everything is empty, and that is why everything is sacred, and everything becomes the whole universe too. So the stone is empty. What'd you say?
From Shobogenzo, how do you understand empty? What does empty mean? Empty.
From very many perspectives, similar to the Huayan. The stone is, what shall we say, revivified. The whole universe pours into the stone. Mike pours into the stone. I pour into the stone, and we all kind of. But the stone is not there. But oh boy, is it there! And it's there like we never imagined with our deluded mind. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, you've given me an interpretation of emptiness there, which I didn't hear from Sensei.
Oh, Sensei, Sensei's MMK should never have been released. And I bumped noses with Brad on
emptiness. I'm talking about emptiness in Shobogenzo. So, for example, you've got a chapter like Kuge, which we translate flowers in the sky or flowers in space. So the ku of Kuge means sky or space, but it also means emptiness. So Sensei's teaching of emptiness, you'll find it in the early Pali Sutras as well. It's one aspect of emptiness, because emptiness means empty of something. So if I'm empty in Sensei's teaching, I'm empty of greed, empty of anger, empty of ignorance. And especially if my autonomic nervous system is balanced, that's the state of emptiness. It's the state of being free of faults. My body being empty of faults is balance of the autonomic nervous system. And that teaching of emptiness is there in the early Buddhist teachings. But in Nagarjuna, so that's one aspect of emptiness. But the most important teaching in Nagarjuna is a stone is empty of its own existence as a stone. It's full, as you just said, it's full of the whole universe. Thich Nhat Hanh has made this very clear, you see, by studying the meaning of svabhava, which means self-existence in Sanskrit. That comes from Nagarjuna.
Materialist for me.
Sorry?
Thich Nhat Hanh is too materialist for me, but that's a side issue. Let's leave him.
Yeah. So, you see, Shobogenzo, the last chapter, Hachidai Ningaku, the 8 human truths, it comes from the Pali and Sanskrit, the 8 thoughts of a great person. Maha, Purusha, Vitaka. Maha means great, Purusha, person, Vitaka, thoughts. And they progress one after the other. So the first one is Japanese shoyoku chisoku, means have small desire, no contentment, no satisfaction. And that they progress. And the 8th one in Japanese is fukeron, which I think I translated in Shobogenzo, no idle discussion. Fukeron represents the Sanskrit nishprapancha, and nishprapancha means not spinning things into self-existence. It's related with this thing again of, so it means don't turn happenings into stones. Don't turn the happening with whom I'm conversing now, don't make that happening into an objective person who is James Cohen, who you've known from experience as being the Jewish lawyer, you see.
And stop throwing the empty stones because it hurts. So can we agree to stop throwing stones? And Mike, I'm going to say something you hate to hear. Let the past go now. Come on.
Well, you see,
at least with me, okay?
The answer to that is not yet. No, the answer to that is not yet. I was listening before we spoke today to a thing on YouTube, which may I play it to you now? I've got it here. It'll just take a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
You want it darker.
What are we listening to?
There's a lover in the story, but the story's still the same. There's a lullaby for suffering and a paradox to blame. But it's written in the scriptures and it's not some idle claim. You want it darker? We kill the flame.
Leonard Cohen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're lining up the prisoners and the guards are taking aim. I struggled with some demons. They were middle class.
Okay, turn it off. What's your point? What's your point?
So, yeah, so he was just going to say there was, I didn't realize I had permission to murder and to maim, you know?
Well, when Joshi Sasaki was your teacher, maybe you did. Boom.
Yeah. You want to make it lighter than it is, Jim. Let's let it with water under the bridge. No, there's a lot of dark stuff to be atoned for. The reason I chose Leonard Cohen there was thinking about Leonard Cohen. That guy was a Zen rabbi. You know, although I've opened myself to being anti-Semitic, I say I've had Jewish teachers in the past who I very deeply revere, and you know, Leonard Cohen said it's written in the scriptures, and what was the next line? Written in the scriptures, and not in vain, or I've forgotten. But anyway, it's to be taken seriously. You know, you want it darker, we kill the flame. You know, the idea of atonement, you know, you've got Yom Kippur, haven't you, in the Jewish tradition? The Day of Atonement.
I'm a very bad Jew. I'm so Jewish, I became a Buddhist.
Well, yeah, I think that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem, Jim, I think. That's why I asked you about your relationship with your father. Because...
Oh, my father's idea of Judaism was watching a ball game on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, the point is, Judaism is your shadow. And in Jungian terms, you better integrate it if you're going to become the Jungian hero. As opposed to the Freudian failed hero.
Yeah. I'm too much of a simpleton. I only want one thing. I don't care about, if you want me to atone, I'll atone. Did you ever see the atone phone? There's a phone that you call for Jews. You can leave a message now in atone, and then you hang up. Yeah. The atone phone. So I just want to get along. Mike, let's be friends.
No, you see, this is the problem, Jim. This is what I used. You want to say peace, compassion. But no, you've got permission to murder and to maim.
Not
and you're making a pretty damn good job of it.
I don't understand you because I do not understand how anyone could practice Buddhism so long and still be as angry as you are sometimes. Now, there's righteous indignation. I'll give you that. That's fine. You're entitled to that. But don't be angry and don't hate people and don't make trouble. Don't make tension when it's not necessary. If someone's offering an olive branch, offer an olive branch. The things I don't like about the Jews in Israel, why don't they offer an olive branch? Why don't the Palestinians and the Jews get along? You think there's anyone who's like, I'm pro-Jewish? I'm not. I'm like, the Jews in Israel are crazy. I don't like them. I don't like the politics. I mean, I'm not talking about the individual people. So I'm saying the same thing. Wait a second. I'm saying the same thing with you now.
Yeah.
Olive branch time. I know about what happened, and I'm sorry if I played any role in it, but now let's that atonement also means at one minute. Let's just let it flow.
Not Kippur doesn't mean that. Sorry to have to teach you Hebrew, but Kippur doesn't mean atonement. The English word atonement means at one minute, but I'm talking about Kippur. It means
I'm not talking about Judaism with you.
It means before the divine, one recognizes one's inadequacy.
But when I'm talking to somebody divine, I'll recognize it.
Jim, you are like somebody who ran over my baby, and then you say to me, here, peace, pick up the olive branch. No, that isn't the appropriate thing to say.
I didn't run over your baby. I tried to get your baby in an ambulance and get him to the hospital. That's all I was trying to do. I didn't do anything.
And you dropped it. You dropped it on its head, Jim. You dropped it on its bloody head on the way to the ambulance.
Not me.
Mistakes were made, but not by me. Cognitive dissonance.
Not about the books. No, the books is I tried to do something good for you and the sensei, and I was just trying to work something out. And I like the man in the middle.
Leonard Cohen understood it so much better than you understand it, Jim. The road to hell is paved with your good intentions.
Well,
you have to recognize the dark side and stop everything's beautiful. No, it's not. Leonard Cohen said it perfectly there. I didn't realize I had permission to murder and to maim. So when I sit in Zazen, Hineni is the perfect expression for embodying the truth of not knowing, of being ready for whatever's going to happen.
Okay, well, then do this. Call me stupid, call me naive, which I probably am. Call me a cockeyed optimist or whatever you want to call me. I just don't buy it. I just want to be friends. So, wait a second. You got to get to the doctor. You okay?
Yeah, it wasn't a doctor's appointment, Jim. It was a Skype interview, but it's been cancelled, so time is not a problem.
Okay, we got a few more minutes. Okay. Yeah. So you want me to atone? I'll atone. You want me to apologize? I'll apologize. You want me to mean it? I do in the heart that I know we all could have done better, and I could have done better. But I just I cannot be angry. So I wish you would just not be angry at me, and you can be angry at other people. I don't care about that.
Can I tell you? Speaking of God and Dharma, this is part of my process of atonement. Is that partly because of you see, Sensei said when he started studying MMK. That MMK was philosophy and not religion. Okay, for him, the Buddhist teaching was, in the end, was philosophy and not religion.
He went back and forth on that. Even in the Real Dragon book, he says it's a religion. Yeah. He was very ambiguous on that.
Exactly. Yeah. That's true. But I, as you described, sort of latched on to the point. It's not a religion. I accepted that view. But then when I was observing what was going on, behavior seemed to be very religious. The Zen monks that I was looking at seemed to be acting in a very religious way, which was turning Sensei into a kind of cult, you know, with him at the top. And you had to be part of the cult, you had to believe what he said, in which case he called you venerable Jim Cohen.
Oh,
but
please.
if
You know how many
disagree,
times I was on the Dharma shit list? Pardon my French. Because I'm the fool. You know, there were three approaches to Sensei. This is my joke. There were the smart ones who took off back to Europe and just kept their mouth shut.
Yeah.
There were the people who just said, Sensei, everything you said is right. I made the mistake of occasionally saying, Sensei, I like your idea about the parasympathetic nervous system, but you know, may I suggest this alternative viewpoint? And that is why once a week I go from venerable to not venerable, and back to venerable.
Exactly.
Then not to
well, it's
venerable.
ridiculous. It's a joke, isn't it, Jim? I mean,
it was a complete joke.
It was, but it was really, from what I saw, it was religious. It was typical religious cultish behaviour. So now I'm a Tony, if you let me. So I that really prejudiced me against religion. Okay, but translating Nagarjuna again, when you come to the final chapter, he talks about abandoning all views. It hit me that my view that I turned against God was also a kind of view. So Sensei put it like this about God and Dharma. He told me, God is God, Dharma is Dharma. His usual thing, you know, A is A, B is B. He said, but if we say God is Dharma, that is a compromise that can save all people in the world. Now, I didn't like the sound of that because it sounded like a kind of a little white lie, you know, a compromise. But what Nagarjuna says, and this solves the problem for me beautifully. In Sanskrit, he says, anekartam ananartam, beyond identity, beyond difference. And that beautifully expresses the relationship between God and Dharma. They are not the same thing, but neither are they different.
Not one, not two.
If it's not too pushy, I would encourage you to look again. You know, don't throw out your Jewish heritage and the tradition, because those old stories, you know, a lot of people made a lot of sacrifices to transmit those old stories, and there's a lot of wisdom in them.
Oh, I know. So, I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. And as I like to say, I've become the Zen rabbi in many ways.
Yeah.
And you can't take the Jewish boy, his culture, out of, you know, even if I don't grow and wear the hat and grow the long beard. Well, I have the beard. I have the beard actually. But the point is, I understand what you're saying. But even there, you know, the Jews are divided between the Jews who said my way or the highway. There are Jews who think I'm not Jewish because I'm not as Orthodox as they are, you know. Yeah. And then there are other Jews who says, well, we should all just get along. So I'm also there in Judaism. I'm turn the other cheek. Was that actually, that was the other guy, the competition, who said that, turn the other cheek, right? Or was that in the Old Testament? You would know better. I don't know. But anyway, I'm a turn the other cheek, extend the olive branch. We can all live together. Yeah,
but I'm saying, never mind about extend the olive branch. Get back to Kippur first. You know, atonement, recognizing what went wrong, then that's the basis for going in the right direction. Okay. And I would suggest the right direction for you is to be a true Zen rabbi. That's the direction.
I think what we need is a reconciliation commission like they did in South Africa and these places, in where you let everybody say what they think is wrong and who killed who and who raped whose sister and who did all these terrible things. And then you say, okay, now we look to the future. Yeah. What else are we going to do, Mike?
Well, the point is not to say what other people did to me, because that's how the Dhammapada starts, isn't it? The Buddha says, you know, I was abused. So again, it goes back to the stones versus happenings. If we conceive of ourselves as stones, then I can be abused, you know, and I've got something to be angry about.
We're all bad. We're all bad.
If we think of ourselves as happenings, it's a different thing. But having see, even in Buddhism, Jim, we've got this. Ga shaku shozo shoaku go kaiyu mushi don jinchi jushin kui shi sho sho isai ga kon kai sange. You know those words?
How would you translate them?
Ga I shaku shozo, done in the past, shoaku go, many bad actions.
Oh, all evil. Yes, all harmful words, thoughts, and yes.
Yeah, kaiyu mushi donjinshi. They're all stemming from beginningless
greed, anger, and ignorance.
Ignorance.
Born of my body, mouth, and mind. Now I Kippur for them all.
Exactly. That's right. Exactly. So that's him. I mean, now of course, Master Dogen's Master Tendon Yogi said we needn't bother with confession. You know, if we just sit, that's it. But I'm suggesting that truly to embody the truth of just sitting, you can sum it up in one word. Hineni. It means here I am. You're open. It's not a question of mistakes were made, but not by me. That's the usual attitude. That's cognitive dissonance.
We all made mistakes.
Open. Yeah.
We all made mistakes. Yeah. And at some point, you got to say, stop weighing whose mistakes were bigger than the other guy. They all cancel out.
Well, you're rationalizing it.
No, when the book thing happened, I thought you were the biggest horse's ninny in the world. But that's my view.
Yeah.
You thought I was like this meddling guy, and I was. So the point is, we all did bad. We all did bad, and I did bad, and I'm sorry I did bad. Can you say you're sorry you did bad? Say sorry. I'll say I'm sorry. You say I'm sorry.
I've told you already, Jim, that I'm consciously holding a grudge, and I've been holding it for a reason. And right now, Hineni, okay, you asked to meet. Here I am.
Okay, I hope that this is not the last time. When I, you know. Do I respect you as my senior in the Dogen Sangha? Sure. Do I respect you as a fellow who gave me a gift that I turn to every day? Yes. Do I still think you're a pain in the ass? Yes. Can I do that? Would you let me think you're a pain in the ass? I don't mean bad.
Listen, Jim, if you become a true Zen rabbi, you will be redeeming yourself. You'll be redeeming me. You'll be redeeming Nishijima Sensei.
Well,
that's your task. To resurrect our father.
Which father?
Well,
our father on heaven or Nishijima?
Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Okay. In any event, I guess this is a good time. I got to go have dinner with the family.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. It wasn't so bad after all, was it, Jim?
Oh no, it was terrible. Chodo, thank you. I'll see. We'll do this again sometime.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it again. Yeah.
All right. See you later. Bye.
Cheers.